Matthew Mona here, and there's a huge misconception going on the internet that you need a beefy desktop PC with an RTX 2080 Ti and an Intel 99 bajillion K processor in order to take advantage of ray tracing. And that's further from the truth because quite frankly, you could get good results with the cheapest RTX card at 1080p with settings set to high. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with ray tracing, it's basically a technology that allows you to render shadows and light and makes them look a lot more lifelike than using rasterization processes that we're typically used to in gaming. Like, this is the stuff they use in CG to combine real life with animation to make it look more realistic. Now, this video is sponsored by NVIDIA, and I'm not here to force you to use ray tracing, but to educate you and show you the type of system you need and the benefits you get with ray tracing. And then you can decide whether you want to use it in the games you play or the games that support it, or whether you want to turn it off completely and get the most frames per second as possible. Now, the system we're using is not super expensive, but it's definitely not a budget PC. I would say it's like a mid-range. It's about $1,000, and what you're essentially getting is a AMD Ryzen 3600X, 16 gigabytes of RAM. You're using an RTX 2060. We have a B450 Micro ATX motherboard from Gigabyte, a Fractal Nano S case. We're using a Noctua cooler to keep things nice and quiet, a G3 Supernova power supply, and most importantly, no RGB. So if there's one game that really takes advantage of ray tracing, it's definitely Control. The visual experience is enhanced greatly. Like, look at this. Jessie's approaching the window, her reflection's in it, she can see herself. You also have the reflection of the background. This is something that happens in real life. You're walking down the street, you peer into a store, you can kind of see in, but because of the glare and the reflection, you automatically see some objects from the street. As soon as you turn ray tracing off, the reflections are gone, Jessie's gone, and all you can do is see inside. It basically looks like someone put a color matte, a white color matte, reduced the opacity, added a little bit of blur, and called it a day. So again, here's another example of ray tracing. Jessie is standing in the middle of a hallway, and on the right-hand side, you have those beautiful reflections. You can kind of see inside the room, but you also get the reflections from the other side of the hallway. Even the door has more texture to it, more high dynamic range. Like, you can see the different textures of the brown compared to ray tracing off. And finally, same idea. This time the light is reflecting from the top of the ceiling. You see it on the floor with ray tracing on, whereas with ray tracing off, it just doesn't exist. And I think this gives you a different type of feel when you're playing the game. Metro Exodus is this awesome RPG game set in a dark, scary world, and it uses ray tracing to set the mood. It uses it to add realism with global illumination. We're outdoors, it's bright, it's a little bit sunny, so the light is hitting the weapon differently with ray tracing on compared to ray tracing off. With it off, it's not doing anything. It just looks dark. You can't see the details inside of the crossbow, whereas on the left-hand side, you can make out those finer details. Even the shadows are a bit different. If you look in front of him on the path, they're very harsh with ray tracing off. Like, they have these sharp edges with no roll off whatsoever, where on the left-hand side, it rolls off a bit more naturally. The abandoned house is interesting because it has a darker tone to it with ray tracing on. And where it really changes the mood is when you enter the house itself. Look at the left-hand side. There's harsher shadows, you have light coming in through the window, it's bouncing off the floor, you can't see everything. It gives you a sense of spookiness. You don't know what's lurking in the shadows or it's gonna jump out on you. The right-hand side is dark, it has kind of a scary tone too, but you see everything. It doesn't feel realistic. As he turns around into the room, he stares at the back cupboard and look at the shadows going across it. It's darker, it's going inside of the shelves to give it some depth, whereas on the right-hand side, it just kind of looks fake. Call of Duty Modern Warfare is a game that just came out. It too incorporates ray tracing, and you can play it with settings set to high at 1080p. In this image right here, you can see the differences between RTX on and off. Not as crazy as Control, but it's mostly in the shadows. That pole the shadows on the left look a lot more natural compared to the right. It looks like there's a nice Gaussian blur around the edges of it, making it blend into the scene a lot more naturally. On the right-hand side, there's a shadow, but it just looks a bit more fake. So again, another example of the shadows. This time the light is spilling out of a door. Left-hand side looks a lot more natural. The light is spilling out, then rolling off and going away. Whereas on the right-hand side, it doesn't look like that. It just basically looks like someone cut a triangle, filled it with light, and didn't allow any roll off whatsoever. Shadow of the Tomb Raider is really interesting because they used ray tracing to light the scenes. And as you can imagine, there's tons of different scenes in this game. You have caves, you're outdoors, you're in cities, it's nighttime, it's daylight. Like there's just tons of lighting that needs to be perfect. There's 5 types of shadows being used. And in this scene, we're probably using a combination of sunlight shadows and translucent shadows. And what's happening is you have this directional lighting hitting the earth, bouncing off everywhere, and what you get is different contrast in the grass. On the right-hand side, it just looks like one simple color. On the left-hand side, you have separation in the grass where the light is going. Some parts of it is being lit, others are not, which means it's being blocked by an object. So in this scene, it's the opposite. It's nighttime, the sun is gone, and the light source happens to be coming from a bunch of small candles. Now, typically with candles, you get big shadows. There's nice contrast, but with ray tracing off, it doesn't exist. It's really hard to do without ray tracing. It's just hard to mimic that naturally. With ray tracing on, you can see the difference. The book is lit, you have proper roll off, Mary's face or the statue is completely lit by all the candles surrounding her. You have the big shadow behind her, giving her some depth. Even the person sitting on the chair, across her chest, there's a little bit of light spanning across it from the candles, as there should be. Then the ground. You have the human shadows. On the right-hand side with ray tracing off, it's harsh. It doesn't look realistic. On the left, it looks proper. It looks diffused the way it's supposed to be. And finally, the last game is Battlefield 5. This is such a great game and one of the first games to get ray tracing. Ray tracing here is being used exclusively for the reflection, so anything that is a mirror, metal, water, or glass has the potential to reflect. You will see it with ray tracing on. Right off the bat, both of these tanks have a little bit of water on top, but you don't see any reflection with ray tracing off. On the left-hand side, you can see stuff moving through the water, which means it's reflecting its surroundings. Now in front of it is also very noticeable. You see a lot of water in the foreground, and with that, you can see the reflections happening with ray tracing on, whereas with ray tracing off, it just looks like a very dark puddle. So here's what I want you to take away from this video. Ray tracing does help with the visual experience, especially when you're playing games that are campaign-based or RPG. Every single visual detail helps you feel more immersed into the game, whether it's a little shadow or crazy reflections like you have in Control. Now, it doesn't mean you should always leave it on, because I get it. Some of us like playing multiplayer games, and having the highest frames per second is the most important thing ever, especially if you're taking advantage of a high refresh display. But I think, especially in a story setting, ray tracing has a lot of benefits to make that story even better. Now, if you have any questions about this video, let me know in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video.